I currently have the file open that I've been working with, or if you haven't been following along, you can come into the Chapter 8 folder to find the file and get started with this. The first thing you need to do before you start working with inventory is make sure that inventory is enabled. That's through Preferences. We'll go to Edit, down to Preferences, and we'll see the Items and Inventory category. Now, there aren't any for the individual, but there certainly are for the company. And this is where we can see the options for purchase orders and inventory, such as inventory and purchase orders are active. That's active because I said yes in the Easy Step interview. If not, I can turn it on here. You also have the option to warn about duplicate PO numbers or to warn if there's not enough inventory or quantity on hand to sell when you're doing invoicing. So as you can see, it's pretty simple. I want to go down and talk a little bit more about units of measure even though we're not using it. Units of measure is a feature that allows you to sell things in different ways. For example, if I was selling paper, I could sell it by the piece or by the ream or by the case. If I was selling fabric, I could sell it by the yard or by the bolt. So we don't use any of that for our particular company, so we have not enabled it, which is just fine. That's all there is to the preferences, so we'll say OK, and then we're ready to get started entering our items. Items, of course, are from a list, so I'm going to go to the List menu. Choose the second option from the top, which is the item list. You'll see that right now it only has one thing, out-of-state sale exempt from sales tax. So that's because we talked about sales tax again in the Easy Step interview. Well, I want to start adding my items, and I'm going to add several because I want to show you different things and different ways to use it, as well as making sure our file is set up for what we want to do later on in different chapters. I remember that normally the keyboard shortcut for adding a new item is Control-N, so I'll press that on my keyboard. And it brings up the new service form. Initially, everything is set to be a service, but this is where you have to make a decision, and I want to take just a few minutes to go over each of these because they are importantly different, if that's a good way to put it. First of all, a service is a service. So when I do training and I am an instructor, that's a service that I provide, not actually a product. Then you have two different types of parts. You have inventory parts and non-inventory parts. Inventory parts are anything that you would keep in stock on a regular basis. For example, I may buy 20 copies of a particular CBT title. A non-inventory part is something that I'm ordering specifically for a particular job or a particular customer. If I was in construction, for example, maybe somebody wants a certain kind of door or a sunroof or something like that. It's a part that I'm going to order from a vendor, but not something I normally keep in stock. We also have a category called Other Charges, and this can be also a variety of different things. It could be miscellaneous fees, maybe you have a setup charge or a delivery fee. It's something that doesn't fit into the other categories. The rest of these are actually part of your invoicing process. For example, a subtotal is something that you have to do because in order to create, say, a discount, you have to have a subtotal in order to provide it on. Our discounts in QuickBooks only work on the line item directly above where we're applying the discount. So by subtotaling, we can kind of group things together and say all of these things are supposed to receive a discount. The group feature itself is also very nice if you tend to sell things kind of as a package. You can have 5 or 6 or 10 individual items, but you can put them together into a group and then invoice them out as the group. You can then choose to either include all of the individual names or just the group name. I think discounts are kind of obvious, as are payments and all the sales tax information as well. So I think what we should do is that we should go ahead and get started creating some items, because I have several that I actually want to create. The first has to do with training, so it's going to be a service item. The name of this is simply going to be QB 2009 for QuickBooks 2009. It's not a sub-item of anything else. It's not used in assemblies or performed by a subcontractor, and I can put in a description. I'm not going to put in a rate or a tax code or anything like that because I actually don't sell this item. This is actually going to be a parent item, and I'm going to put other items that I do sell below it. But I do have to put an account because QuickBooks won't let me create any one of these services or items without giving an appropriate account. So this would just be, of course, training income. Once that's finished, I'll come up and click Next. So there's one down. Now I'm going to start kind of fleshing out my items. Underneath QuickBooks 2009, I want to put that we offer a certification prep course. Now we are going to choose that it is a sub-item, so we check the checkbox. We have a sub-item of, only one item so far, QuickBooks 2009, and we'll put in a description. This time we actually will also start putting in some rates and things. So we'll say that that particular class is maybe $99. Because it's a service, it doesn't get taxed, so I'm going to choose it's a non-taxable item. And instead of just doing plain old training income, this time I'm going to put it under virtual because we do this as a virtual class. And then we'll do next. The next item I want to do is not a service. It's actually something we keep in inventory. So I'll choose inventory part. And this is going to be the QuickBooks CBT. It is a sub-item of QuickBooks, of course. But you'll notice that this time it's not actually giving me that option. Even though this is part of QuickBooks training, I actually put that as a service, and you can't combine service and inventory. So what I could do here is I could create another account, and I could more properly call the parent accounts QuickBooks 2009 Virtual Training, QuickBooks 2009 CBT Training to separate the differences. I'm not going to do that right now. I'll actually remove the check mark, and we'll just leave it as a plain old item. But because it is an inventory part, I can put in the manufacturer's part number. Something like that. You'll also notice that we now have two different sides or columns of information that we can work with. One about the purchase and one about the sales. So I could put in the description of the purchase that the vendor would want to see. And then of course the cost would be what our cost is to purchase it. And then you have to have a COGS account. What is being charged for the value of this, the $125? You also can choose a preferred vendor. Notice that it also copies the description over here, but you know that's really not going to be useful for the average person, so I'll go ahead and type it out in English for them. So that's going to be useful when I go to create my invoices, something that's a little bit easier to understand. Once again, I get to do the different pricing. This time it's what I sell it for. If it's taxable, and because this is an item, it is taxable, and then what income account it should go into. Well, it's no longer virtual training. I actually had a CBT training category, so that's going to keep us straight as to which type of training I'm selling. You then can keep track of different types of inventory information. It already gives us an inventory asset account. It wants us to tell it what the reorder point should be, how many we currently have on hand, the total value, and as of what date. So I'm going to say when I get down to 3, I would like to order more. This will help me with my reorder report. I currently have 5 on hand. And you'll see that it automatically calculates the total value based on the value that I put for the current cost. We can change this cost later on, but right now this is our starting point, so this is how the calculation is done. Once that's all finished, we can click Next. Notice that my automatic spelling comes on. It doesn't like the word CBT. I'm going to tell it to ignore all of those. It doesn't like DVD, so we'll ignore all as well. And there we go. Now we've created both a service and an inventory part. The next thing I want to do is create a non-inventory part. Maybe I have a particular company that I know is going to be getting certified, and so I want to create for them a voucher, but we don't usually keep those in hand. It's usually something that we just buy as we need them. My drop down appears to be a little bit stuck. You know, that happens every once in a while when you're using a computer. No big deal. I'm just going to go ahead and click OK to close the window. OK again to get rid of the message. And then I'll press Control N to create a new item and bring that dialog box back up again. When I display the drop down, I can choose non-inventory part. And I'll give that a name. And a description. and a price. This is a non-taxable item. And I have to attribute the income to something, so let's see, we will go ahead and call this one just plain old training income. And we'll say next again. And we need to do just a couple more. I know there seems like a lot. So we've done a service, an inventory part, a non-inventory part. Now we're going to create a subtotal, because ultimately I want to be able to group all of these things together, do a subtotal so I can do a discount. Subtotal comes first. I'm just going to give it a simple name of subtotal. And that's really all of the information you need. That one's actually pretty easy. You could type a description if you wanted to. Not always necessary though. Easiest one we'll do, we'll click next. And now we get to put together our group. Now this is where we're going to put all of those different things together. So this is going to be the QuickBooks certification package. And we'll put the plain English version. And then of course we need to do the build. So I need to add all of the items. I can simply choose these from the drop-down list. First thing we have is the CBT. Then after they sit through the CBT, then they take the certification prep course, and then they need the voucher. You'll notice that I also have a checkbox that allows me to print the individual items that make up the group. Usually that's a good idea, but sometimes you also want to just show the package as a whole without all the components. I'll go ahead and check to print the items in the group, and then I'll say next. All right, you're hanging in there very well. We've been through almost all of these. The last one that we're going to talk about today in this part is a discount. People always like a discount, so I will call this Cert Discount. So we're going to offer a discount when people buy the certification package. What this is going to do is it's going to add up all of the items in my group, and then I'm going to give them a 15% discount off of that. And the next thing we need is an account. Now, this is actually kind of an interesting setup. What kind of account would we use for discounts? Actually, discounts are an income account, and that's kind of a weird way of thinking it. But if I add, let's just say I sell this thing for $500 and I give a $100 discount, I'm getting $500 into my income account, but I then need to subtract the 100 from the income. So it's actually an income account, even though it's called a discount, and sometimes it's termed a contra income account because it's doing kind of the opposite of what you normally think of. I actually don't have any of those defined. But remember, if you go to the top of any of these account lists in QuickBooks, you can always create accounts on the fly. So I'm going to create a new one. The account name is simply going to be Discount. It's not a sub-account of anything. We can type in Discount. Usually you might want to be more descriptive than that. And we're not going to worry about a tax line, but normally it would probably go under gross receipts or sales. Actually, I'll go ahead and click that now since I already clicked on it anyway. Then I'll save and close. And there we go. Now we have a discount account to apply this to. Now that we've gone through each of the things that we need to create our invoices ultimately for people who are getting certified, now I can say OK. And here you can see all of the items that have been added to the list of items that I sell, both services, products, subtotals, groupings, and even discounts.